Hello everyone, welcome to this week's webinar. I hope you are all doing well. Do let me know in the chat how you are doing and let me know if you can all hear me properly as well. I hope you have had a great start to the week and thank you all very much for coming. Bonjour et bienvenue à ce webinaire ouvert à tous. Avant de commencer, pour ceux qui ne nous connaissent pas, je m'appelle Cecilia, je suis une professeure d'anglais et le Cercle des langues est une école d'anglais en ligne pour les adultes. Nous proposons des formations d'anglais sur mesure en fonction de vos objectifs, de votre niveau et de votre budget. Et la bonne nouvelle, c'est que nos formations sont finançables par CPF. So now I will return to English to get started in the webinar. Do feel free to come and say hello in the chat. So today is a new month. This is our first webinar of September. Salut Dimitri, thank you for coming. So to start the new month, we will be beginning a new 4-part series today. So this webinar is the first of 4 webinars on the topic of the United States. If you've been following our webinars for some time, you'll know we did a series on the United Kingdom, so we thought it would be fitting that we now do one on the United States. So today we are going to be looking at a very interesting topic, and that topic is politics. Politics is, of course, something that is talked about a lot. Some people don't like to talk about politics. Some people love to talk about politics. But lots of people pay a lot of attention to the politics in the United States. They have a very specific and complex political system. So today we are going to be looking at some vocabulary and expressions that will help you find your way around American politics. You can let me know in the chat, any of you particularly interested in American politics? Do any of you keep up with American politics? This phrase, keep up with, just means to stay up to date with. So do you read news about American politics? Do you watch the elections maybe? Let me know if it's something that is interesting to you. So let's get started. So today we're going to be dividing our webinar into 3 parts. First, we're going to be looking at the foundations, then we're going to be looking at the structure of the government, and finally, we're going to look at elections and presidency. Adrien, so you're interested in American politics every 4 years. I think that is the case for a lot of people. We only follow it when it comes to the elections, and we'll be having a bit of a closer look at elections later on. So to begin, we're going to look at some of the foundations of American politics. So to begin with, the origin of American politics began with the independence of the United States from Great Britain. So this is what is celebrated on Independence Day on the 4th of July. So we're going to look at some of the important people and decisions that led the American government to what it is today. So first of all, we have the Founding Fathers. You might have heard of this group before. The Founding Fathers were leaders. They were revolutionaries who led the war for independence from Great Britain. And they created the idea for the government of the new independent United States. We also have the Constitution. So when they were creating a government, they needed to decide what that government was going to look like. And so the Constitution outlines how the United States government has to operate. and how it's going to be set up. We also have the Declaration of Independence. So this was a declaration, an announcement, a written announcement that explained and justified the separation of what were at the time the 13 colonies to become independent from Great Britain. That was their independence. And then finally, we have the Committee of Five. This was another group of 5 people who wrote the Declaration of Independence. So this all had to happen before American government could be formed, because prior to that, the America, what was at the time, was run by the British government. So by the king, actually. So then we're going to move on to some important places for politics. So we'll start with a bit of a quiz. Can anyone tell me what this first picture on the left is? Do we know what this building is? They're very famous, so it's highly likely you're going to have seen them before. Let me know in the chat if you know what either of these places are. Brilliant, Christelle. So over here we have the White House. And what about this picture here on the right? Does anyone know what that is? Let me know. Yes, so Maurice, it is the Oval, we would call it the Oval Office in English. So the White House, which you already knew, is the building in Washington. It's where the president lives. And then the Oval Office is, no worries at all, the Oval Office is the working space for the president. And it's called the Oval Office because of its shape. An oval is like a circle, but it's just been flattened at the sides a little bit. So it's called the Oval Office because of its shape. So now we're going to look at some more pictures. Do we know what this is on the left? Can anyone tell me what that famous building is with the dome? So Chloe, this is not the Pentagon, this bit. Yes, Adrien, perfect. It is the Capitol. So this is also located in Washington, and it is the meeting place for United States Congress. We'll have another look at what Congress is later. And can anyone tell me what the building on the right is? This one maybe is a bit harder to identify. It's maybe not so well known, but one of you might know what it is. Does anyone know what that building is? Do let me know in the chat. Does anyone know? No, we can have a look then. So this is the Supreme Court, and we'll have a look at what the Supreme Court is a bit later on as well. But it is basically where the legal procedures take place. It's the highest legal court in the United States, and it is housed in this building. So let's have a quick look at what we've learned so far. What do we call the document that outlines how the government of the United States must operate? Can you remember what that document is called? And it's something that is referred to a lot nowadays. You'll often hear people talking about their rights with regards to this document. It's drawn upon a lot in politics, as spoken about today. People like to refer to it. So this isn't a rights declaration. The declaration was something else to do with the Declaration of Independence. This is something else. Brilliant, Adrien. Thank you very much. It is indeed the Constitution. So now we can move on to the structure of government. So when the government in the United States was created, the founding fathers wanted to make sure that power was separated inside the government. So there wasn't one person who had all the power. This was to try and keep things working as smoothly as possible. So the United States government has 3 separate branches. So this is 3 separate sections that all deal with a different thing, and the power lies in a different place. So let's have a look at how these branches work and how they make up the government. So our 3 branches are the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. So the executive branch, the head of the executive branch is the president, and it's made up of the president, vice president, their advisors, and some different departments and agencies. We also have the legislative branch, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And these are two levels of representation of states. So the House of Representatives is the lower level, and then the Senate is the upper level. And these 2 things together form Congress. Then finally, we have the judicial branch. And the judicial branch is made up of the Supreme Court, which we saw earlier, which is the highest court in the United States. They have federal power. So when you have federal power, this means you operate across the country as opposed to state by state, because they have state governments, local governments, but this is the highest level of court. And then we also have the Federal Judicial Center. And this is an education and research agency for courts, for the court. And in terms of what they do, the legislative branch, so legislation is anything to do with law. Well, legislation are laws. So the legislative branch, they make laws. Then the executive branch enforces laws. They carry out laws. And the judicial branch comes in evaluating laws. They interpret laws and apply them to cases. So that's what happens in court. A particular law will be applied to a particular case, to a particular person, or particular situation. So these various branches of government, of course, include lots of different people. We already had a look. And so now we'll have a look at some of the notable positions within the government. So first, do we know who these 2 people are? You don't have to tell me their names, but can you tell me their positions, perhaps? First on the left and then on the right. Do you know what positions these people hold in the US government right now? Brilliant, Christelle. So first, I'm sure everyone knows, we have the president. And then to the right, do you know who we have? Exactly. So president on the left, vice president on the right. So the president is the head of the state, the head of the government. They are the highest position. And they also are in charge of the army, the American army. Then we have the vice president, who has responsibilities, but is also there in the possibility or the eventuality that the president is no longer able to continue acting as president. Maybe if they die or if they resign or for any reason, then the vice president can step in. Then we have a few other roles. Ooh. Sorry. We have first the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. So we saw the House of Representatives. They make up the legislative branch. And the Speaker is the highest person in that area. So they're the lead officer. We also have the Chief Justice. This is the head of the judicial branch. So they are the head of the Supreme Court, and they are also joined by 8 other justices. We have the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the main legal advisor to the government. And finally, we have Secretary of lots of different things. So you could have Secretary of the Department of Education. They are the heads of the various executive departments. So we saw that the executive branch is made up of lots of different departments and agencies, and the leaders of these departments are the secretary. So can anyone remember what 2 components make up the legislative branch of the United States government? Can you remember what the names of the 2 components that make up the legislative branch are called? Let me know in the chat. And if not, I can give you a clue. So, Maurice, very well done. Congress is what we call them together. But what are the 2 separate parts that make up Congress? But you're quite right that Congress is the legislative branch. Does anyone remember what the 2 separate parts are called? So Congress, as I said, is the overall, what we call them put together, but what do we call them individually? I will maybe give you the clue. So we have the House of Representatives, or the House, and the Senate. So maybe, Zubir, that's what you're going for with what you said, but just didn't quite type it out. So it is the Senate, the House and the Senate. And then, as Maurice correctly said, those together, we call them Congress. So as you said, Adrien, you become interested in politics every 4 years. And every 4 years, we have the elections. And these are watched by pretty much the whole world. Everyone watches the American elections. Well, not everyone, but lots of people. And then forget about American politics until the next ones. But they take place over quite a long period of time with lots of different stages. And sometimes it can be hard to tell who's going to win. So there's a bit of suspense. We don't know what is going to happen. So now we're going to have a bit of a look at elections and presidency. So first we'll look at the party system. So the American politics has what is called a party system. I'm very sorry for some technical difficulties we seem to be having. But yes, so first we have partisan. So partisan is another word to say that it is a party, a system that has different parties. So candidates or presidents, they belong to a political party. They are not just independent. America has a 2-party system. This means there are 2 dominant political parties. There are other parties, but they're not. They don't really have so much of a chance, and they don't get presidential candidates as often, or nominees. Then we also have the phrase a major party. So the 2-party system means there are dominant parties, and these dominant parties are also called major parties. And they're the most likely to win elections from year to year. And the two dominant parties or major parties are the Republicans. So they are the more right-wing and conservative party, and the Democrats, the Democratic Party, who are more liberal and more left-leaning than the Republicans. And then the opposition, you call the other party. So if you're a Republican, then the Democrats are the opposition, and if you're a Democrat, then the Republicans will be the opposition. Now let's have a look at the voting system. So the voting system is quite complex in the United States. First, we have a candidate. So voting is when everyone is choosing, putting forward who they would like to win an election. So a candidate is someone who puts themselves forward for a position in government. So when you vote, you will likely be voting for a candidate. We also have the word polling, and polling is basically voting. Then in America, they use a particular type of system, or this is a voting system that is used in certain places and in America, and this is called the first past the post system. And this means that instead of needing a majority, so instead of needing to get more than 50% of votes to win anything, a winning candidate can win an election just by having the highest number of votes. So they don't need to have more than a certain number. Then we have this term electoral college. Maybe this is something you've heard as you've been hearing about American elections, but the American voting system works quite interestingly in that citizens, normal people, don't directly vote for presidential candidates. They don't directly choose who becomes president. They vote on candidates, and then electors who act on behalf of states will do the final vote, which actually chooses who is president and who is vice president. So usually the elector will vote for what their state voted for, but they won't always. And then that's what decides who is president and vice president. We also have the phrase voter turnout. So turnout can be used to talk about an event, a party. You could say, oh, there's been a great turnout. This just means the number of people who come to vote. In the case of a party or an event, of course, it would be the number of people who come to that event. Then we have two types of elections which lead up to the presidential election. We have a primary, so this is the first stage for which candidates are chosen, and this happens on a state and local government level. Then we also have a caucus, and this happens between political parties, and participants decide which candidates they support. Then we have the term ballot. So a ballot is a device or piece of paper used to cast a vote. So you can have a paper where you cross who you would like to vote for. That's a ballot. And then finally, we have the term lobbying. And people who are lobbying, lobbyists, are people who are working in political fields, campaigning for perhaps a particular party to win or campaigning for a particular agenda. And finally, we have some vocabulary on presidency. So the first word we have is inauguration. Now, an inauguration is the ceremony during which a president officially takes up office and becomes the head of state. Let me know in the chat if any of you have ever watched an American inauguration, a presidential inauguration. It is broadcast on TV, so you are able to watch it. even if you're not there in Washington. It takes place in the capital. Then we also have the presidential oath. So this is a sworn statement. That's what an oath is. That is basically the president promising, swearing that they will carry out their presidential duties properly and act in the interest of the country. And this has to be taken before the president can carry out any powers or any duties. We then also have impeachment. Maybe you heard this word being used when Donald Trump was the president, but impeachment is a process where charges, so criminal charges, are brought against a high-up government official, a senior government official, charges of misconduct. So they can be brought by a judicial body. We also have the word term. Now, the term, United States presidents have 4-year terms, and they can repeat this up to 2 times. So they could be president for a maximum of 8 years. The term is the period of time a president is in power for, or a vice president, or anyone taking a particular position. And then we have office. So you heard me say taking up office, or you can say someone is in office. Office is a position of authority. So it's used to talk about the president. And then we have the First Lady. Now, the First Lady is, of course, the president's wife. So that is some vocabulary to do with presidency. And now, can anyone remember what we call the very first round of the United States elections that takes place on a government local level? Brilliant, Christelle, thank you. So it's a primary, and for the plural, you can call them primaries. And what do we call the process? Oh, sorry. Well, I gave that one away because we're having some technical problems. But did you all remember what we call the process where charges are brought against a public official? It is called impeachment. So that brings us to the end of our webinar. I'm very sorry for the glitching. I do not know what was happening there. But hopefully you were still able to follow the content, and hopefully you were still able to see the writing and the pictures. You're very welcome, Chloe. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. I hope you feel like you all learned something. And yes, next week we will be returning with another topic on the United States. So I hope to see you next week. If you are interested, thank you all very much for coming today. It is indeed, Christelle, politics is a hard subject in your own language. So you all did a wonderful job managing to grapple with politics in English. I find politics very confusing, so thank you for joining me today to look at this subject. Si ce webinaire vous a plu et que vous souhaitez approfondir votre pratique de l'anglais, n'hésitez pas à faire une demande d'information sur notre site internet. Nous serons heureux de vous présenter nos formations en détail et même de vous proposer un test de niveau gratuit à l'oral avec un de nos professeurs. So please do come and see us if you'd like to learn about politics, business, whatever you'd like to learn about. We'd be very happy to work with you. And if you don't have any final questions, that will be all for today. You're very welcome. And bye-bye, everyone. I hope you have a lovely rest of the week.